Out front tonight, Democratic Congressman Khanna. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee. And I appreciate your time, Congressman. Look, the president is putting the odds at less than 50-50 that the bipartisan group of congressional negotiators will get a deal before there's another shutdown. So he has the odds for a shutdown. Where do you put them?
Well, it's very discouraging. I think we can get a deal done. The Democrats are willing to fund border security. We're willing to fund smart border security, even give more than $5.7 billion. We would give $10 billion, but we're not going to give money for the 15th century idea of a wall. And I think the president, if he can move beyond his campaign promises, could easily get a reasonable deal.
So, you know, in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, the president said he would not rule out another shutdown, right? His quote, certainly an option. That's what he used to describe another shutdown. Now, look, we know from the most recent polls, Americans overwhelmingly don't want that outcome, according to Monmouth, right? That is a bipartisan take from people across the country. Do you believe the president will go ahead with another shutdown? Does he think that that's a real alternative?
I don't, for two reasons. One, the polling showed that it was unpopular for him. But more importantly, his own economic advisor said that it was costing the country 0.13% of GDP every week. The president knows that he's nowhere if this economy falls into recession or tanks. I just don't think he's going to take that kind of risk again.
So when you talk about being willing to give something for border security, but not a wall, look, this is what it all comes down to. Sometimes words are not just words. Sarah Sanders today was asked about it. She said that you all, Democrats, need to give something. Here she is.
If they don't come back with a deal, that means Democrats get virtually nothing. That will make the president and force him to have to take executive action that does not give Democrats the things that they want.
Will you vote for a deal, Congressman Khanna, that includes some wall?
I will not, and I think the president is miscalculating his odds on executive action. I mean, Senator Rubio, Senator Blunt have said that they would not support the president in declaring a national emergency. And as you know, we could invoke Section 5 of the National Emergency Act, and the Congress could pass a joint resolution to overturn it. Now, it would require a veto-proof majority, but the question is whether Senator Rubio and Blunt and others would stick to what they said they would do.
Well, of course, Senator Graham has already said he supports a national emergency. I mean, you know, I guess the reality of it is, are you willing to take one?
Well, I would vote to overturn it, and I think it's clearly unconstitutional. I mean, in Harry Truman, when he declared a national emergency to nationalize steel for the Korean War, the court said that that was unconstitutional. So certainly this is not going to be a constitutional exercise of the president's power. But here's the point. We're all for reasonable border security, and the president, if he just gets past the wall and if he thinks about what's common sense, can get a deal. I mean, people say, well, Ro, you have borders, you have security in your own house, but I don't build a wall around my house. I have an alarm system. I represent Silicon Valley. They're technology solutions that are effective, and my hope is the president will see that. Now,
of course, you know, the president points at communities, you know, whether it's LA or San Francisco or anywhere across this country, and says, well, they have walls too. And in fact, when he, you know, gave in here, right? There's no other word for it, right? He caved, and the government reopened, and he didn't get any money for his wall at that time. He was slammed by his base for doing that. Here are a couple of people.
He promised something for 18 months, and he lied about it.
She has just whipped the president of the United States. He just reversed himself. That's a victory for Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, when he hears that from people that he cares deeply about, he cares what they think about him, he cares that they reflect what he thinks his base wants, do you think that will make him dig in even more? He doesn't want to look like a loser.
Unfortunately, they're calling the shots, and this is the base that he thinks got him elected. But leadership is about convincing your base to do something that makes sense for the country. The president, everyone knows, has a lot of loyalty from his base. His poll numbers are through the roof still with that 40% of the country that voted for him. I think if he turned to them and said, look, I'm getting border security, we're getting funding for smart border security, and it doesn't have to be about a 15th century wall, I actually think the vast majority of his base would stay with him. So I think he is over-reliant on the Ann Coulters and isn't doing what would the vast majority of the country wants.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Congressman Khanna. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Erin, for having me on.